So Mrs. Morgan's mother and doctor was talking to each other. In between that, the midwife called the doctor. Suddenly, they heard the voice of the midwife calling upon them. Andrew saw that it is already 3:30 and that he shall begin with the procedure. Thus, he got up and go to the bedroom, up his stairs. As he went away from there, it took him almost hours to perform the surgery. It was a rather tough one. While the first ray of days came inside from the corner of the window, the Morgan child was born. Unfortunately, it was cold and still. So what happened? NR, he was doing a struggle to make the pregnancy successful, to make the surgery successful, but it is too difficult for him. But after then, he saw that the child was born, but it was lifeless. As he grazed the still from the shivers of the horror passed over the Andrew. After all that he had promised, his face was heated with own expressions and the chilled suddenly. So what happened when he comes with the Mr. Morgan on the way? He was saying, "All will be well. I will see. I will take the I will take the care of Mrs. Morgan. Your child will be." And after 20 years, Mr. Morgan was being a father, so being will be a father. So he was so much happy, and that is why he was so much. So Dr. Andrew was worried that how now, what answer I will give to them. But this is the time of a dilemma for the doctor because at that time he saw that Mrs. Morgan was also collapsed. So now there is a dilemma. Now the state of mind here, the doctor have to take the decision. That is that. So this chapter teaches what is the decision power. What if we have to do the first. That is depends on. So he had just took the care of Mrs. Morgan. So what happened as he continued to took the lifeless child and a shiver passed down his spine, his while his face was heated because of the efforts put on the waves, cold and held him. He was devastated. More he was confused. He thought that himself between two addressing stillborn or the miserable mother. He could not make decision continuously, so he immediately addressed the mother first, while giving the child to the nurse. Susan lied unconscious too, and the fact of the anesthesia still repressed. But he put in all the efforts to bring her out of the desperate state, even while her strength continued to weaken. And instantly broke the medicine's glass of the fill of syringe and inject into her. He worked tirelessly to bring her to her senses. After a moment, when he was assured that she was safe and her body was being to the regain its strength, he returned his attention to the child. His hair was all over the sweaty face, but he did not waste another moment. So, because he want to be know what happened to. So, what happened? That midwife was just midwife was just what she had done in between when the doctor's Andrew was taking the care of Mrs. Susan Morgan and giving the injections and all that thing to her. In between that, when midwife thought that the child was died, so she had just wrapped that soden in a soden newspaper and put below the bed. So when the doctor asked to her, she was hesitating at that time to give the child. The midwife got anxious and asked him where the child was. The doctor and she had kept under the bed. Without wasting another moment, Andrew took the child out, and it was a boy, a perfect shape and with the flawless skin. His body was warm and his skin was extremely soft. The head hung loosely on his weak neck, and cord was hanging too from his body. His limbs felt boneless because the bones was so soft. So when the child was born, it was like a you can say the softness of that child was like a cotton. You are just touching a cotton like that. It was showing. So here the writer described about the newborn child that it was totally developed a child, but all things are very soft. At the time when the child was born, their head was also very soft, and their was head was hung at the time on his neck. Uh, slowly, it was taking time to be taken stiff and that. So that is why doctor said that he will just take that boy in his hand and he examined the boy. This is a way of examining that his body was warm and he was everything is all right. His body was warm, his skin was soft, and his limbs was felt boneless. So he was examined at that time, and he thought that the boy was he have to use something else for to alive the boy, because he knows a very much theories. He learned those theories and he want to use them. So in this state, we can say the doctors have used their presence of mind, and whatever the knowledge they have to use here, that is it. So here the doctor said that still ignoringly, Andrew stared the child with his haggard frown, and the whiteness meant by the one thing, apexia, pedilia. So in his mind, unnaturally tensed, raised back, chased at once, and had a Samaritan to treatment had been used to instant. It was sweet. Actually, what happened? There is a type of apexiopatria. A condition arises when the body is deprived of oxygen and causing unconscious or death suffocation. Pedilia means suffocation and unconscious condition caused by lack of oxygen and excess of carbon dioxide in the blood, accompanied by the plainness of the skin, weak pulse, and loss of reflex. So what happened? He knows that the boy is suffering from these themes, but he was alive. So still bent to take the child out from the bed. Andrew glared all the time. He observed him and thought about the reason he was so white. He knew it could be to the case of oxygen deprivation, because he had seen the similar case in the Samaritan. He focused on the treatment that was used. He instantly stood up and instructed the nurse to bring the hot water and cold water in the separate tub. The nurse hesitated because of for a moment she thought the efforts were useless. But the doctor hesitated and shouted on her to get the done instantly. While she had gone to take what he had told her to, Andrew grabbed a blanket and laid the child on it while he performed the unique respiration method. The nurse arrived with the necessary items and he began with the procedure instantly. In the basin, he put the cold water alone, and in the other, he put the hot water. At the temperature, it could be beer. The next moment, he was seen dipping the child in those basins one after another. He continued doing. So what he was doing, he was just like a ball. He was doing like that. He felt that he had failed, and suddenly all his hoping the fate. He could feel in the nurse grazing upon him, disheartened. On the other hand, there was an older woman who couldn't utter a word. Her eyes were constantly fixated upon him. He instantly remembered how badly she wanted her grandchild. Moreover, he remembered how her daughter was waiting for one of his child. It was all waste now. So the thing is that they were negative because they thought that the child was died, but he was a doctor, and he was a doctor, and he was up to the last moment he was has he think about that I will do something for that child. So continuously he was doing, he was just like that, he was playing with the ball. First he was put it into the mm, hot water, then the cold water. Again he went, took the child to the hot water, again the cold water. Continuously, like a juggler, he was just put the boy in the hot and cold water. After continued struggle, the floor was extremely wet and dirty. The doctor almost slipped many times because first he was taking from here, then here, then hot water to cold water, hot water to cold water. So that is why it was sleepy at that time. Then he asked to the midwife about the towel, that she have to give the towel to him, and he was just lose hold of the child sometimes. The child was also wet, and he is being compared to the white fish. The midwife and the pleaded before the doctor told him stop, the child is stillborn, because she thought that why doctor are doing this all this thing, he was died now. So, just as it was miracle, the child chest, which was enclosed in the Andrew's hand, took breath. He continued having living Andrew weak in his knees. The feeling of the little one's breath on his finger almost made him faint. So instantly he worked for the reviving him with the double efforts until the child breathed deeply. As he gasped, a bubble from his musk. Musk means the nearby the nose, and formed from the tiny nose. His pale skin turned pink, and the body no longer felt like it was lifeless. The next instant, he started crying. So, what happened? The doctor was just after taking like this, he rubbed his body with a towel continuously. So he saw that the some breath he was just you can say he observed the breath that the child has taken the breath, but he was just doing rubbing the child continuously. The midwife was shouting to the doctor, "Don't do like that." He was died to doctor, "Don't do like that." But he continuously doing his efforts. And then what happened, because he wants that the boy would take the oxygen properly, so it will be alive his body. So when the boy took a deep breath, he was taking a relief. Then he rubbed the boy with a blanket. The nurse muttered the words to pray with, and then what happened, the boy was just a nose in front of our nose. Sometimes if water is there, so one bubble is there, so that is called a mask. So he take a deep breath, and then he started crying. So when he started crying, the nurse and the grandmother of the child was still so much happy. The nurse muttered the words of prayer while tears rolled down her eyes. As Andrew handed her the child, he felt extremely weak and tired.